That night at the gala, just as I raised the abortion pills to my lips, a baby's cry rang out in my head. Mom. Don't swallow. If you get rid of me now, Julian will never have kids. He has severe fertility issues. My hand froze instantly. His first love had just returned to the country. Julian was helping Chloe to her seat. He looked up at me, his eyes cold and warning, telling me not to cause a scene. Over the past 3 years, I had learned to read that look perfectly. Every time he looked at me like that, I was supposed to obediently step back and hold back my tears. But this time, right in front of everyone, I slipped the 2 pills back into my clutch. I looked at Chloe, a faint smile on my lips. Since you're back, I'm done serving him. I'm leaving. Bye. The whole room was stunned as I stood up and left. Julian ordered me to stop. I didn't look back. Since God had let me hear my baby's voice, I wasn't going to give this game up to the Pierce family. I would make everyone who wanted to see me as a joke regret this for the rest of their lives. Vivian's POV. On the night of the Pierce family charity gala, I sat in my seat, clutching 2 abortion pills tightly in my hand. In the center of the ballroom, Julian was shielding Chloe from a glass of wine, drinking it for her. The chandelier light fell on his broad shoulders, and also on the tear-stained corners of Chloe's eyes. The guests cheered, whispering about how their childhood romance was meant to be, after all. Someone glanced at me maliciously and raised their voice. Then what about Miss Vance? She can't keep occupying the position of Mrs. Pierce forever, right? I looked down at the warm water in my glass, about to put the pills in my mouth. Suddenly, a childish, sharp wail echoed in my belly. Mom. Don't swallow. If you get rid of me now, that scumbag Julian will be childless for the rest of his life. My hand froze. The voice was still screaming in my belly. He has low sperm motility. The baby in your belly is his only chance of having a child in this lifetime. He is playing the hero for his first love now, but in the future, even if he kneels at your door begging for a glance, he won't even get a number. My pupils dilated in shock. My nails dug deep into my palm. Julian helped Chloe back to the VIP table and looked up at me. His gaze was extremely cold, carrying his usual warning, as if reminding me not to make a scene. For the past 3 years, I was a master at reading this look. I had always thought I was just a placeholder. When Chloe left the country, I came. Now that Chloe was back, I had to leave. Tonight, I wanted to end it cleanly. Abort the baby, cut ties, and leave myself a shred of dignity. But the little thing in my belly refused. Mom. Don't look at his handsome face, he's just a blind fool. As long as you keep this pregnancy, the entire Pierce family will have to revolve around you in the future. In my past life, you aborted me, and in the end, they drove you crazy and you died in a mental asylum. My heart hammered violently. Past life memories? If what this child said was true. Chloe walked over with a glass of juice, pretending to smooth things over. Vivian, everyone was just joking tonight. Don't take it to heart. Julian is just taking care of me. We grew up together, he's used to it. Someone immediately chimed in nearby. Chloe is so generous. Anyone else would have kicked the uninvited guest out long ago. Everyone was waiting to see me swallow my pride. But I raised my head, and in front of everyone, I put the 2 abortion pills back into my purse. I looked at Chloe, my lips curving into a cold, sharp smile. Miss Sterling is right. Being used to something is indeed a habit that needs to be broken. The smile on Chloe's face froze instantly. Julian frowned, his voice displeased. Vivian. I'm going to get some fresh air. I stood up, not even granting him a glance. You guys enjoy your habits. The moment I walked out of the ballroom, the voice in my belly let out a long sigh of relief, then said urgently. Mom, beautifully done. But whatever you do, don't go back to the villa, and don't tell Julian I exist. Chloe, that venomous snake, has her eyes on you. You have to stay alive so I can live. I looked back at the half-closed heavy doors of the ballroom. Inside, glasses were still clinking, celebrating Julian's reunion with his first love. I touched my flat belly, my eyes becoming more determined than ever. Okay, I said softly in my heart. I'll take you away. I'll save you once, and you have to help me fight for my life. I will. The little voice was full of energy. Mom, let's survive first, and then make them regret everything. I did not go back to Julian's villa. Vivian's POV. I stopped my car at a street corner. Pretending to go into a pharmacy for stomach medicine, I slipped right out through the back door. I pulled out my phone's SIM card, threw it into the storm drain without hesitation, and turned around to buy a cheap, prepaid burner phone with cash. My counter-surveillance moves were seamless. The little guy in my belly was stunned. Mom, you're so good at this. Next, go south, go find Mary. Deep in the Lower East Side, the alteration shop was tucked away in a narrow alley. The owner, Mary, was someone my grandmother had once helped. After hearing my story, she didn't say a word and hid me in the secret attic on the 3rd floor. Just as I sat down, loud, urgent banging came from downstairs. Is Miss Vance inside? Mr. Pierce is looking for her. The man's voice outside was polite, but it carried a suffocating pressure. My whole body tensed up. Just as I was about to jump out of the back window, the voice in my belly suddenly screamed. Don't move. That's not Julian's man, that's Sienna's. She saw you holding the pill box tonight. She suspects you're pregnant and wants to drag you for a blood test to kill me directly. A cold sweat broke out across my back. Sienna Sterling, Chloe's half-sister. The older sister played the sweet, innocent first love, while the younger sister did all the dirty work in the shadows. They had long seen me as a thorn in their side. Even if it was just a suspicion, they wanted to wipe me out. There's no Miss Vance here. I only do clothing alterations. Mary argued loudly downstairs. The man outside sneered. Mrs. Higgins, this is Sterling family business. You'd better know what's good for you. I stood in the dark stairwell, my eyes icy. I didn't hesitate anymore. I grabbed a ring of keys left by my grandmother, crossed from the third-floor windowsill to the neighbor's balcony, and slipped into an empty building. Half an hour later, I changed into an oversized, worn-out black puffer jacket, put on a face mask and a beanie, and blended completely into the bustling crowd of the local fish market like a drop of water. The quiet, pretty, submissive Vivian died tonight. Mary sent me an encrypted text on Snapchat. They left. They said not to dream of running. I sneered. Dreaming? Let's see whose dream shatters first. The rain poured down. I took shelter in an abandoned workshop in North Brooklyn. The place was drafty, but hidden enough. I spread out the old ledger my grandmother had left on the wooden table, turned to the last page, and found a yellowed business card, Dr. Evelyn Carter. Before my grandmother passed away, she told me that if I was ever pushed into a corner, should find this gynecologist. Mom, call her quickly. In my past life, you went too late, and those two evil Sterling sisters dragged you onto the operating table. The voice in my belly carried deep fear. I didn't panic. First, I wrote down my current situation, the people I had contacted, and the possible risks of exposure on a blank piece of paper. I could no longer rely on Julian to solve things like I did in the past 3 years. From now on, I was the only protector for myself and my child. At 3 a.m., I used my new burner phone to call Dar. Evelyn Carter. Julian's POV. By the time I found the alteration shop on the Lower East Side, it was already noon the next day. I was still wearing yesterday's suit, my eyes bloodshot, radiating a dark, uncontrollable anger. Has Vivian been here? I glared at the woman behind the counter. The woman didn't even look up. Mr. Pierce, didn't anyone teach you to say hello before barging into a shop? My assistant behind me took a step forward, trying to intimidate her. The woman pointed directly at the security camera above her head. Touch me and see what happens. Let the whole city see how the Pierce family bullies ordinary people. I raised my hand to stop my assistant, forcing down my rage. She was emotional last night. I just want to take her home. Why was she emotional? Don't you have any idea? Mary sneered. You seemed to enjoy having girls on both arms last night, and now you're here playing the devoted partner? Her words felt like a hard slap across my face. I knew what she meant. At the gala last night, Chloe had leaned in and grabbed my arm, and I hadn't pushed her away immediately. In Vivian's eyes, that was probably a silent confirmation, a betrayal. Proof that I had chosen Chloe over her. I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles turned white. It wasn't because Mary was wrong, but because she was entirely right. The moment I failed to push Chloe away was the moment everything started to crumble. When Vivian left last night, I even thought she was being mature. But when I returned to the empty villa and found she had taken all her IDs, leaving behind every piece of jewelry I had ever bought her, a terrifying panic gripped my chest. Just then, Chloe called. Julian, did you find Vivian? Sienna said she looked pale last night. She's really worried about her. Sienna is worried about Vivian? My voice turned freezing cold, cutting her off. Chloe, keep your sister in check. If anything happens to Vivian, I will hold the Sterling family personally responsible. I hung up, and my assistant handed me a blurry surveillance screenshot. In the picture, she was wearing a worn-out puffer jacket, walking into a crowded market with her head down. I stared at the photo, my heart squeezing painfully. She wasn't throwing a tantrum. She was hiding from me. She was running as if escaping a mortal danger, using every trick she had to get away from me. Vivian's POV. Inside Dar. Evelyn Carter's private clinic. It's early, but the baby is stable. Right now, you need nutrition and rest. Dr. Carter pushed the ultrasound image toward me. I touched my flat stomach and asked in a low voice, what if someone wants to steal the baby, or kill it? Dr. Carter looked at me deeply, her voice sharp. Then remember this, you are an independent mother, not someone's breeding tool. If you want to protect him, you must first arm yourself to the teeth. Those words ignited a fierce fire in my chest. At dusk, I was having toasts at a small bakery near the clinic. I had only taken 2 bites when Sienna Sterling, flanked by 2 bodyguards, arrogantly pulled back a chair and sat opposite me. You really know how to hide, Vivian, coming to a trashy place like this. Sienna's venomous eyes swept over my stomach. My sister is kind-hearted, but I'm not. If you're carrying some bastard you shouldn't be, you'd better get rid of it now. Otherwise, I'll make your life a living hell. The little guy in my belly shook with anger. Mom. That's exactly how she smiled when she drove you crazy in my past life. Tear her apart. I raised my eyes. Does your sister know you're doing her dirty work? Sienna's expression changed slightly, but she quickly laughed it off. Don't try to drive a wedge between us. My sister is soft-hearted, but I'm not. Vivian, you've been with Julian for 3 years. You must have gotten a lot of money, right? Learn to be content. What I got was given by Julian, not the Sterling family. I pushed the hot bowl of soup away. If you want me to be content, keep your hands out of my bowl first. Sienna didn't expect me to talk back so directly. Her smile vanished completely. One of the men behind her took a step forward, trying to intimidate me. But I set my phone upright on the table, screen facing outward. It was in the middle of a call. Dr. Carter's voice came through the speaker. Vivian, I've already sent your location to Mary. Stay put. The shop has cameras, and I'm recording this call. Sienna narrowed her eyes. You think this will save you? At least it keeps you from doing anything stupid tonight. I stood up. Miss Sterling, if you're really that capable, stop fighting other people's battles. If you want something, say it directly. Sienna stared at me, lowering her voice. I want you to disappear from Julian's life. What a coincidence. I picked up my coat. So do I. I walked out of the bakery, only to see Mary rushing over on a scooter, a pair of heavy fabric shears sitting in her front basket. Mary threw a helmet into my arms. Get on the back, don't look back. I climbed onto the passenger seat. The wind whipped past my ears, and the baby in my belly let out a tiny laugh. Mom. You were so badass back there. I held Mary's waist tightly. The running was over. From today on, I would make everyone who belittled and plotted against me pay in full. When we got back to the workshop, I didn't sleep right away. I wrote down everything Sienna had said, word for word, including the height, clothing, and accents of the 2 men behind her. Mary walked in with hot water. Seeing my hands trembling as I wrote, she cursed in pity. Why are you still writing this down right now? So there won't be any confusion later, I said. I had suffered too much from not having proof in the past. A simple misunderstanding from Chloe, a stop causing trouble from Julian, or an be more generous from bystanders was all it took to erase my pain. I didn't want to use tears to beg for belief anymore. I wanted to keep a record of everything, even if it seemed tedious right now. The baby in my belly nudged me gently, as if in response. I looked down, pressing my palm against my stomach, finally feeling a solid warmth toward this sudden twist of fate. Julian's POV. By the time I found the alteration shop on the Lower East Side, it was already noon the next day. I was still wearing yesterday's suit, my eyes bloodshot, radiating a dark, uncontrollable anger. Has Vivian been here? I glared at the woman behind the counter. The woman didn't even look up. Mr. Pierce, didn't anyone teach you to say hello before barging into a shop? My assistant behind me took a step forward, trying to intimidate her. The woman pointed directly at the security camera above her head. Touch me and see what happens. Let the whole city see how the Pierce family bullies ordinary people. I raised my hand to stop my assistant, forcing down my rage. She was emotional last night. I just want to take her home. Why was she emotional? Don't you have any idea? Mary sneered. You seemed to enjoy having girls on both arms last night, and now you're here playing the devoted partner? Her words felt like a hard slap across my face. I knew what she meant. At the gala last night, Chloe had leaned in and grabbed my arm, and I hadn't pushed her away immediately. In Vivian's eyes, that was probably a silent confirmation, a betrayal. Proof that I had chosen Chloe over her. I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles turned white. It wasn't because Mary was wrong, but because she was entirely right. The moment I failed to push Chloe away was the moment everything started to crumble. When Vivian left last night, I even thought she was being mature. But when I returned to the empty villa and found she had taken all her IDs, leaving behind every piece of jewelry I had ever bought her, a terrifying panic gripped my chest. Just then, Chloe called. Julian, did you find Vivian? Sienna said she looked pale last night. She's really worried about her. Sienna is worried about Vivian? My voice turned freezing cold, cutting her off. Chloe, keep your sister in check. If anything happens to Vivian, I will hold the Sterling family personally responsible. I hung up, and my assistant handed me a blurry surveillance screenshot. In the picture, she was wearing a worn-out puffer jacket, walking into a crowded market with her head down. I stared at the photo, my heart squeezing painfully. She wasn't throwing a tantrum. She was hiding from me. She was running as if escaping a mortal danger, using every trick she had to get away from me. Vivian's POV. Inside Dr. Evelyn Carter's private clinic. It's early, but the baby is stable. Right now, you need nutrition and rest. Dr. Carter pushed the ultrasound image toward me. I touched my flat stomach and asked in a low voice, what if someone wants to steal the baby, or kill it? Dar. Carter looked at me deeply, her voice sharp. Then remember this, you are an independent mother, not someone's breeding tool. If you want to protect him, you must first arm yourself to the teeth. Those words ignited a fierce fire in my chest. At dusk, I was having toasts at a small bakery near the clinic. I had only taken 2 bites when Sienna Sterling, flanked by 2 bodyguards, arrogantly pulled back a chair and sat opposite me. You really know how to hide, Vivian, coming to a trashy place like this. Sienna's venomous eyes swept over my stomach. My sister is kind-hearted, but I'm not. If you're carrying some bastard you shouldn't be, you'd better get rid of it now. Otherwise, I'll make your life a living hell. The little guy in my belly shook with anger. Mom. That's exactly how she smiled when she drove you crazy in my past life. Tear her apart. I raised my eyes. Does your sister know you're doing her dirty work? Sienna's expression changed slightly, but she quickly laughed it off. Don't try to drive a wedge between us. My sister is soft-hearted, but I'm not. Vivian, you've been with Julian for 3 years, you must have gotten a lot of money, right? Learn to be content. What I got was given by Julian, not the Sterling family. I pushed the hot bowl of soup away. If you want me to be content, keep your hands out of my bowl first. Sienna didn't expect me to talk back so directly. Her smile vanished completely. One of the men behind her took a step forward, trying to intimidate me. But I set my phone upright on the table, screen facing outward. It was in the middle of a call. Dr. Carter's voice came through the speaker. Vivian, I've already sent your location to Mary. Stay put. The shop has cameras, and I'm recording this call. Sienna narrowed her eyes. You think this will save you? At least it keeps you from doing anything stupid tonight. I stood up. Miss Sterling, if you're really that capable, stop fighting other people's battles. If you want something, say it directly. Sienna stared at me, lowering her voice. I want you to disappear from Julian's life. What a coincidence. I picked up my coat. So do I. I walked out of the bakery, only to see Mary rushing over on a scooter, a pair of heavy fabric shears sitting in her front basket. Mary threw a helmet into my arms. Get on the back, don't look back. I climbed onto the passenger seat. The wind whipped past my ears, and the baby in my belly let out a tiny laugh. Mom. You were so badass back there. I held Mary's waist tightly. The running was over. From today on, I would make everyone who belittled and plotted against me pay in full. When we got back to the workshop, I didn't sleep right away. I wrote down everything Sienna had said, word for word, including the height, clothing, and accents of the 2 men behind her. Mary walked in with hot water. Seeing my hands trembling as I wrote, she cursed in pity. Why are you still writing this down right now? So there won't be any confusion later, I said. I had suffered too much from not having proof in the past. A simple misunderstanding from Chloe, a stop causing trouble from Julian, or and can be more generous from bystanders was all it took to erase my pain. I didn't want to use tears to beg for belief anymore. I wanted to keep a record of everything, even if it seemed tedious right now. The baby in my belly nudged me gently, as if in response. I looked down, pressing my palm against my stomach, finally feeling a solid warmth toward this sudden twist of fate. Vivian's POV. 3 days after Julian left, a red paper bag appeared at the door of the workshop. Inside was a white baby onesie, with a few words hastily scribbled on the front in red marker. You don't deserve her. The fabric at the chest of the onesie had been slashed open, right over where the heart would be. Mary cursed when she saw it, reaching out to burn it. I stopped her, keeping both the bag and the security footage. At the very bottom of the bag was a card with a single sentence: don't bring this curse into the world. My fingers went cold. The baby in my belly didn't yell this time. He was silent for so long that I had to speak first. Are you keeping secrets from me? The tiny voice sounded choked. After a long time, he said, Mom, I didn't just want to be the heir. I sat by the sewing machine, the light casting a pale glow over my face. In my past life, you kept me too. You believed Julian once and moved into the private estate he arranged for your pregnancy. It had the best doctors, the quietest rooms, and locks on the doors. After you gave birth to me, the Pierce family said your health was failing, and they took me to the main estate. Every time you wanted to see me, you had to ask for their permission. My breathing slowly became heavy. I didn't find out you were my mom until I was 5. Before that, they made me call you Aunt Vivian. Then, one rainy night, you ran to the kindergarten gates just to catch a glimpse of me. The security guard stopped you, and you fell gravely ill after going back. After that, I never saw you again. The little voice was very quiet, but it couldn't hide the tears. On my 8th birthday, I fell down the stairs at the main estate. Everyone said it was an accident. But I remember someone had scattered marbles at the top of the stairs. When I opened my eyes, I was back to the moment where you had to decide if you wanted me. The only sound left in the workshop was the low hum of the sewing machine. I suddenly remembered the long hallway of the Pierce family estate, where the lights were bright but entirely devoid of warmth. I used to think I was just unaccepted. Now I realized that being unaccepted was the best-case scenario. What was truly terrifying was that they would sever my child from my life, and then tell me it was for his own good. Mary couldn't hear the whole story, but seeing my pale face, she asked anxiously, "What's wrong?" I packed the baby shoes I was making into a clear bag. Mary, I need a lawyer. And a doctor who can ensure my medical records can't be accessed by anyone else. Mary was stunned for a second. You're finally ready to fight back? Yes. I sealed the bag. I used to think about running away. That's not enough anymore. I need them to know that I am not someone who can be quietly swept under the rug. I contacted Dr. Evelyn Carter, and through her, I found Audrey Lawson. Audrey was a lawyer who specialized in family law and women's rights. She spoke quickly, her eyes sharp. After hearing my story, she only asked one question: do you want to protect the child, or do you want to protect yourself? I said, both. Audrey nodded. Then stopped negotiating with them using emotions. You need a registered address, an income, prenatal records, and evidence. You also need a visible social circle. A person hidden in the dark is the easiest to manipulate. I looked out the window. Julian had offered me the most beautiful cage, and Sienna wanted to seal the outside of it. But I chose to walk right into the light of the crowd. Audrey didn't ask about the baby's voice, nor did she press about the past life. I only told her I had a very long nightmare, a nightmare where I lost my child and my name as a mother. After hearing this, Audrey didn't laugh. She just capped her pen. Then we prepare for the worst-case scenario. Many tragedies in real life don't happen because people don't love their children enough, but because they have no boundaries, no evidence, and no way out. I engraved the word boundaries into my mind. I used to think that loving someone meant asking for less and making things easier for them. But my child's past life was like a bucket of cold water, waking me from my delusions. Love without boundaries is easily taken for granted, until there is nothing left of you. When I left the law firm, I bought a new notebook downstairs. On the first page, I wrote one sentence: no more disappearing. I wanted to make sure my name appeared on ledgers, contracts, medical records, and in the memories of my neighbors. The more clearly I existed, the harder it would be for anyone to erase me. Vivian's POV. Audrey listed 3 things for me to do. First, transfer all prenatal records to a private clinic affiliated with Dr. Carter, where any information request required my personal authorization. Second, immediately register my residence and employment so my life would no longer look like a blank space that could be deleted at any moment. Third, keep all evidence of threats and harassment, but never meet anyone alone. I followed her instructions perfectly. I rented a small storefront on a busy street in the old neighborhood. It was tiny, previously a flower shop, with water stains still visible on the walls. Mary thought it was too run down, but Audrey loved it. It's on a busy street, there are neighbors, cameras, and customers. The more ordinary, the safer. I named the shop Renascent. My grandmother loved that word. I missed her. There were no grand floral arrangements on opening day, only an apple pie baked by Mary. The retired teacher came by with her repaired shirt and introduced 2 of her friends on the spot. By the afternoon, my back was aching, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. At dusk, a young woman carrying a gift box walked into the shop, saying she wanted to repair a gown. She wore a mask, but her eyes kept darting to my stomach. The baby in my belly warned me immediately, Mom, she's not here to fix clothes. She has a recording pen in her bag. She wants to bait you into admitting you're pregnant with Julian's baby. My heart went cold, but I kept my face blank. Leave the gown here. Come back in 3 days, I said. The woman smiled and asked, isn't it hard running a shop alone, Miss Vance? I heard you used to be close with Mr. Pierce. Why did you suddenly stop talking? Are you pregnant and trying to extort him? 2 aunts waiting for their clothes looked up at the same time. I pushed the registration book forward. Name and phone number for alterations. Personal matters are not registered here. The woman, unwilling to back down, raised her voice. Don't get me wrong. I'm just worried about Chloe. She and Julian are childhood sweethearts, and they're about to get married. It looks bad for you to be caught in the middle. I smiled. Whoever told you to say that, go talk to them about how it looks. I picked up the landline phone on the counter and dialed Audrey's number right in front of her. Audrey, there's someone in my shop asking about my personal information using Chloe and Julian's names. The camera is on, and there are witnesses here. Should we call the police now, or send a cease and desist first? The woman's face paled. She grabbed her gift box and bolted. A car was parked outside, the window rolled halfway down, revealing Sienna Sterling's icy side profile. She clearly hadn't expected me to stop taking her insults quietly. I looked through the glass, not hiding, but not chasing either. That night, Julian called. I didn't pick up. I sent him a text message, keep the Sterling family in check. If this happens again, I will release all the names publicly. Julian replied almost instantly, where on earth are you? I looked at the screen, and the baby in my belly said quietly, Mom, don't tell him. I know. I deleted the chat and pulled down the metal shutter. The streetlights flickered on, casting the shadow of my little shop onto the ground. I suddenly felt that although my world was small, it finally had a door, and the key was in my own hands. Before going to bed, I counted the day's earnings 3 times. It wasn't a lot of money, not even a fraction of what Julian used to spend on a dress for me. But every bill carried the warmth of my customers' hands and my own labor. When I put them into the tin box, they made a soft, reassuring sound, as if confirming one thing: I didn't need Julian to survive. Mary called to ask if I was tired. I said yes, but it wasn't the kind of exhaustion that had no end. Mary laughed on the other end. The kind of tired that lets you sleep is a good kind of tired. The baby was sleepy too, his voice soft. Mom, are we opening the shop tomorrow? Yes. I turned off the light. The more they want me to hide, the more I will open my doors. After saying this, I laughed. In the past, I was afraid of being seen. Now, I began to understand that what truly protected me was not the dark, but the bright light where everyone could see how I lived my life. The hum of the sewing machine was a steady, grounding anchor. It was a cheap, second-hand model Mary had sourced from a closing factory upstate, but it's heavy. Cast iron frame didn't shake, no matter how fast the needle flew. Take it easy on the pedal, Vivian, Mary called out from the back room, her voice muffled by the steam of the industrial iron. You're eating up those hems. Like you got a train to catch. A pregnant woman shouldn't be treating a foot pedal like a race car accelerator. I'm fine, Mary, I replied, though I slowed my rhythm slightly. In my lap, a heavy bolt of wool tweed lay warm and comforting. Outside the glass front of Renascent, the late autumn drizzle of Brooklyn smeared the yellow streetlights into long, glowing ribbons on the wet asphalt. It was 6 in the evening. The neighborhood was alive with the sounds of people returning from work, the rattle of the subway grates, the shout of a grocer closing his stall. The distant siren that belonged to someone else's emergency. Mom, she's right, you know, the tiny, clear voice in my head chimed in. It sounded slightly muffled today, as if the baby was curled up tight and warm. The tweed is heavy. Don't press it against your pelvis too hard. Also, that nice lady from number 4B is coming down the street. She has a lemon tart in her bag. I can smell it. Well, not really smell it, but I have a feeling. I smiled, my hand instinctively resting on the slight swell of my stomach. You're a little glutton, I thought back. I'm growing a brain here. I need glucose. And in my past life, we only ever ate those tasteless organic salads Julian's nutritionist ordered. I hated them. They tasted like grass and disappointment. A sharp pang of sorrow, cold and familiar, touched my chest, but I brushed it away. The past life my son spoke of was a shadow. Every action I took now was a chisel chipping away at that terrible future. The bell above the shop door chimed. It wasn't the lady from 4B with a lemon tart. It was Julian. He stood in the doorway, his tall frame blocking the light from the street lamp. Behind him, he wore a dark charcoal overcoat, damp from the rain, and his hair was slightly disheveled, a rare sight for a man who lived his life under the strict curation of personal stylists and corporate publicists. His eyes, dark and heavy with exhaustion, locked onto me. Vivian, he said. His voice was lower than usual, carrying a rough, raw edge that made the hair on my arms stand up. Mary emerged from the back, her steam iron still hissed in her hand. She didn't look intimidated, she looked like a sentinel. The shop is closed for custom fittings, Mr. Pierce. If you have an alteration, leave it on the rack by the door. Julian didn't look at Mary. His gaze remained fixed on my face, then slowly, deliberately, slid down to the wool fabric resting on my lap, trying to discern the shape beneath it. I didn't come to cause a scene, Julian said, taking a single step forward. He held his hand slightly out, a gesture of surrender that looked entirely foreign on him. I just wanted to see you. You changed your number. You left everything. My lawyer said they received a formal notice from an Audrey Lawson representing you. They did, I said. My voice was calm, devoid of the trembling compliance he had spent 3 years training into me. She is my legal representative. Any communication regarding our separation, the division of common property, though we were never married, so there is very little, should go through her. Separation? Julian's brow furrowed, a flicker of his usual arrogance returning. We didn't break up, Vivian. You walked out of a charity gala because you were upset about Chloe. I explained to you, she was nervous, she had just returned. I don't care about Chloe, Julian, I cut him off. The silence that followed was heavy. Julian looked as if he had been struck. In his mind, my entire existence for 3 years had revolved around his attention, his moods, and his relationship with his childhood sweetheart. To hear me dismiss her name so casually, without a trace of jealousy or spite, was a language he didn't know how to translate. If you don't care about her, then why are you living here? He asked, his voice rising slightly as he gestured to the small shop, the rolls of thread, the faded wallpaper. You're living in a drafty storefront in an old neighborhood, working yourself to the bone. For what? To prove a point? If you wanted a different apartment, you only had to ask. I would have bought you a townhouse in Heights. Look at him, the voice in my belly snorted. He still thinks everything can be bought with a deed. Mom, don't let him see your records. He's got his assistant trying to bribe the local hospital staff. I heard his thoughts when he was driving over. He's suspicious. He's very suspicious. I kept my hands steady under the tweed. I am here because I choose to be here. I like the work. I like the people. And most of all, I like the fact that when I lock the door at night, I am the only one with the key. Julian's eyes darkened. He took another step, his leather shoes clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. You're being unreasonable. You're hiding something. I am living my life, Julian. If you don't leave, I will call the police, and then I will call the local news. I pointed to the small, blinking blue light of the security camera mounted above the cash register. The neighborhood association installed high-definition cameras on this block last week. Everything is recorded. If the heir to the Pierce Group is seen harassing a local seamstress on a Tuesday night, I don't think your board of directors will be pleased. Julian stopped. He looked at the camera, then back at me. The frustration in his eyes was palpable, but beneath it, for the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine fear. He was realizing that the quiet, fragile girl who used to wait up for him until 3 a.m. with a warm bowl of soup was gone. This isn't you, Vivian, he whispered. This is exactly me, I said. You just never bothered to look. He stood there for another long moment, the rain dripping from the hem of his coat onto the floor. Finally, without another word, he turned and walked out. The bell chiming a lonely, sharp note behind him. Mary let out a long breath, setting the iron down. Well, he looks like a man who just realized he dropped his wallet in the river and can't swim. I let out a breath of my own, the tension leaving my shoulders. He'll be back. He's not used to losing. He's not just losing, Mom, the baby said, his voice dropping into a serious, almost adult tone. He's starting to realize his own emptiness. But we can't let him fill it with us. Tomorrow, we need to go to the clinic. Sienna is planning something with a doctor she knows. My grip on the wool tightened. What do you mean? Sienna's friend works at the city health registry. She's trying to flag your name. If you register for prenatal care under your real name, she'll know within 24 hours. We have to use Dr. Carter's private network, the one that doesn't sync with the public database until the third trimester. We're already ahead of her, I thought, a cold determination settling over me. Audrey and Dr. Carter set that up yesterday. The Sterling family thinks they own the city, but they don't own the people who actually run it. Julian Pierce sat in the leather chair of his private office on the 62nd floor of the Pierce Tower. The city below was a gray grid of fog and concrete. But his mind was fixed on the small, grainy surveillance photo his security team had procured. It was Vivian, wearing her oversized black puffer jacket, carrying a small bag of groceries. She looked different. Her posture, which had always been slightly hunched, as if she were trying to occupy as little space as possible, was straight. Her chin was lifted. Even in the blurry image, there was an air of quiet self-possession about her that he had never seen during their 3 years together. Mr. Pierce, his assistant, David, said quietly, entering the room with a leather-bound folder. The report from the private investigator you hired. Julian snatched the folder. He opened it, expecting to see a list of associates. Perhaps another man. The very thought made his blood run cold with a feral, possessive fury, but there was nothing. She lives alone, David explained, his voice cautious. She spent the last 3 days working at the alteration shop. She has registered the business under Renascent LLC. The legal paperwork was filed by Audrey Lawson's firm. We tried to look into her medical records, but what? Julian snapped. Dr. Evelyn Carter's clinic is a private cooperative. They use an encrypted local server for their patient files. Our contact in the health department said that without a court order or the patient's signed release, accessing those files is a federal offense. And Lawson's firm has already filed a preemptive notice of privacy protection with the state medical board on behalf of Miss Vance. Julian slammed the folder shut. She's a seamstress. How does she have the money? For a top-tier family law firm? How does she know Evelyn Carter? Her grandmother, David said softly. Before she passed, she apparently had several high-profile clients in the city's old guard. Dr. Carter was one of her close friends. It seems Miss Vance had resources we were unaware of because she never chose to use them while she was with you. The words felt like a physical blow. She never chose to use them because she trusted me, Julian thought, a sudden, suffocating weight pressing down on his chest. During their 3 years, Vivian had never asked for a credit card. She had never asked for her name to be added to the deed of the villa. When he bought her jewelry, she wore it politely to events, but the moment they returned home, she placed it back in the safe. He had thought she was simple, perhaps a bit dull. Now he realized she had been keeping her distance. She had been keeping herself safe. The phone on his desk buzzed. The caller ID showed Chloe Sterling. He hesitated, his finger hovering over the screen. A month ago, he would have answered on the first ring. Chloe was his childhood, his golden memory of a time before his father died and the weight of the Pierce empire fell on his shoulders. But now, the sound of her name brought a strange, dry taste to his mouth. He answered. Chloe. Julian. Her voice was sweet, but there was a tremor of anxiety beneath it that he hadn't noticed before. Are you coming to the gallery opening tonight? Sienna said she saw you driving toward the Lower East Side yesterday. Were you looking for Vivian again? Julian's hand tightened on the receiver. Vivian is my business, Chloe. I'm just worried about you, she said quickly, her tone turning soft, pleading. She left so suddenly. People are talking. They're saying she's trying to blackmail you. Sienna heard she might be trying to claim she's pregnant to get a settlement. She hasn't asked for a single dime, Julian said, his voice dangerously quiet. Well, not yet. But you know how these girls are. They play the victim until they have enough leverage. Julian, my father said the board is already nervous about the upcoming merger. If there's a public scandal about an illegitimate child. I have to go, Chloe, Julian cut her off, his voice flat. I have a meeting. He hung up before she could reply. He sat in the silence of his office, his mind spinning. An illegitimate child. The words echoed in his head, but they didn't bring the anger he expected. Instead, they brought a strange, phantom ache in his chest. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a small, sealed envelope he had received from his personal physician 3 days ago. It was a routine physical report, but he had requested a comprehensive fertility panel after a brief passing comment from his uncle about the future of the Pierce line. He pulled out the document and read the results again. Diagnosis, severe oligoasthenospermia. Sperm count, 5 million/ml. Motility, less than 10%. Clinical note, natural conception is statistically highly improbable. Recommend immediate referral to a reproductive endocrinologist for ICSI/IVF. Options. The paper trembled slightly in his hand. Statistically highly improbable, he whispered. He had never told Vivian. He hadn't even fully processed it himself. But if Vivian was pregnant, if she had managed to conceive naturally during their final weeks together, it was a miracle. It was his only chance. And he had driven her away with 2 abortion pills in her hand, while he stood in a ballroom shielding another woman from a glass of wine. Julian stood up so fast his leather chair rolled back and hit the mahogany. Credenza. David, he roared. The assistant rushed in, wide-eyed. I want a full watch on the Sterling family, Julian ordered, his eyes bloodshot, his voice shaking with a dark, terrifying intensity. Sienna, Chloe. All of them. If either of them goes near the Lower East Side, or near Vivian's shop, I want to know immediately. Do you understand? Yes, Mr. Pierce, David said, bowing quickly. And find out where Evelyn Carter's private clinic is, Julian added, his hand gripping the edge of his desk until his knuckles turned white. Don't touch her. Don't let her see you. Just watch. If Vivian goes there, I need to know. The small bakery down the street from Renascent had the best cinnamon rolls in the neighborhood, but today, I was only drinking hot water with lemon. Audrey Lawson sat across from me, her laptop open, her glasses sliding down her nose as she typed with furious speed. The Sterling family's lawyer sent a query to my firm this morning, she said, without looking up. They're trying to find out if we filed any custody or paternity actions. They're fishing. What did you tell them? I asked. I told them to mind their own business, in polite, billable terms, Audrey smirked. I reminded them that my client has no active legal disputes with any member of the Sterling family, and that any further unsolicited contact from their legal team would be treated as tortious interference and harassment. She closed her laptop with a satisfying click. But they're getting desperate. Vivian. Chloe Sterling's father is trying to secure a major investment from the Pierce Group for his shipping company. If Julian backs out because of a personal scandal, the Sterlings are ruined. They need Julian to marry Chloe, and they need it to happen before the end of the fiscal year. Mom, the baby's voice was tense, lack of its usual playfulness. Sienna is at the flower shop across the street. She's been sitting in a black SUV for 20 minutes. She's talking to someone on the phone. She looks angry. Really angry. I glanced toward the front window of the bakery. Through the condensation, I could see a sleek black vehicle parked illegally in a loading zone. The window was dark, but I knew who was inside. They won't do anything in broad daylight, I said softly to Audrey. Don't underestimate people who are about to lose their social standing, Audrey warned, her voice dropping. To women like the Sterling sisters, reputation is more important than life itself. If they think your child will ruin their chance at the Pierce fortune, they will do whatever it takes to make the problem go away. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, black device. This is a personal GPS tracker. It's linked to my phone and the security system at Mary's shop. If you press this button twice, it silent calls my firm's private security detail. They can be anywhere in the borough within 10 minutes. I took the device. It was small, no larger than a key fob, but it felt incredibly heavy. Thank you, Audrey. I'm not doing this just as your lawyer, Vivian, Audrey said, her eyes softening. My mother was a seamstress too. She worked 20 hours a day to put me through law school, and when a wealthy client accused her of stealing a silk scarf to avoid paying her bill, she had no one to defend her. She lost her shop. I promised myself I would never let another woman be bullied out of her livelihood because she didn't have a voice. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. We're going to win this. We are, the baby agreed. But Mom, we have to go back to the shop now. Mary is alone, and there's a man with a delivery box approaching the back door. He's not our usual postman. I stood up immediately, my heart rate spiking. Audrey, I have to go back. Mary might need me. We left the bakery quickly. The air was cold, the wind carrying the scent of salt from the river. As we walked down the block, I saw the black SUV pull out of the loading zone, its tires splashing through a puddle as it followed us from a distance. When we reached Renascent, the front door was open, the small bell swinging wildly. Inside, Mary was standing near the counter, her face pale, holding a large, flat cardboard box. A young man in a courier uniform was already walking away down the street. Vivian, Mary said, her voice shaking. This just came. It has your grandmother's name on it. My grandmother had been dead for 2 years. I walked over and looked at the box. It was wrapped in thick, yellowed butcher paper, the kind my grandmother used to wrap fabric bolts in decades ago. Written on the top in elegant, faded ink was, for Vivian. To be opened when the first leaf falls. Is it a trick? Mary whispered. It's not a trick from the Sterlings, the baby said, his voice quiet, almost reverent. It's really from great-grandmother. She left it in the old safety deposit box at the bank. The bank finally released it because the storage fee was paid up for 2 years post-mortem. Open it, Mom. With trembling fingers, I tore the paper. Inside was a beautifully preserved vintage wooden sewing box, its brass hinges green with age. I opened the lid. Sitting on top of a bed of velvet ribbons was a small, leather-bound diary and a thick, sealed envelope addressed to Dr. Evelyn Carter. I opened the diary. On the first page, in my grandmother's firm, clear handwriting, was a passage dated 25 years ago. To my darling Vivian, the world of the wealthy is a beautiful garden, but the soil is fertilized with secrets. If you are reading this, it means you have entered that garden, and you have found the thorns. Do not be afraid. The Sterlings and the Pierces think they are gods, but they are only men who have forgotten where they came from. In this book, I have kept the records of every dress, every gown, and every secret they paid me to keep quiet. Use it well. Protect your child. The Pierce family line is not theirs to control. My breath caught in my throat. I flipped through the pages. The ledger was a meticulous record of the city's elite from 30 years ago. Names, dates, fabric choices, and notes written in a private shorthand my grandmother had taught me when I was a child. Oh, the baby gasped in my head. Look at the entry for 32 years ago. Mom. The one under Richard Pierce, Julian's father. I found the entry. My grandmother's handwriting was tight, almost clinical. October 14, 1994. Client, Richard Pierce. Order, silk christening gown for a child not yet born. Note, Richard brought his sister's child to the estate. The medical records from the Swiss clinic were delivered to my shop by mistake with the fabric. Richard Pierce is sterile. The child, Julian, is not his biological son. He was adopted from a surrogate in Munich to secure the Pierce inheritance. Before the old patriarch passed. The Sterlings know this. They have used this secret to drain the Pierce estate for a generation. The room seemed to tilt. Julian wasn't a Pierce. The proud, arrogant man who carried the weight of his family's dynasty on his shoulders was an adopted child, his entire legacy built on a lie that the Sterling family had been using as leverage for decades. My God, I whispered, holding the diary to my chest. Vivian? Mary looked at me, her eyes wide with concern. What is it? It's our shield, I said, a cold, sharp smile spreading across my lips. And it's their ruin. 2 weeks later, the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was filled with the scent of lilies and expensive perfume. It was the annual Sterling Foundation Gala, a desperate, lavish attempt by Chloe's family to assert their dominance in the social scene before their financial woes became public knowledge. I stood in the lobby, wearing a simple, elegant navy maternity dress I had tailored myself. Beside me stood Audrey Lawson, looking like a high court judge in a tailored black suit. Are you sure about this, Vivian? Audrey asked quietly. Once we walk through those doors, there's no turning back. I am sure, I said. Mom, Chloe is about to make her announcement, the baby warned, his voice buzzing with excitement. She's standing on the stage right now. She's wearing a loose white silk dress. She's going to announce her pregnancy to force Julian into a marriage contract tonight. But Julian's assistant just delivered the DNA test results from his own clinic to his phone. He knows. We walked into the ballroom. The crowd was thick, but as we entered, a path slowly cleared. People began to whisper, their eyes darting from my small, neat baby bump to the stage where Chloe Sterling stood behind a microphone, flanked by her father and her sister, Sienna. Julian stood near the front of the stage, his face pale, his eyes fixed on a tablet screen in his hand. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. Ladies and gentlemen, Chloe's voice rang out, sweet and trembling with simulated emotion. Thank you all for coming tonight. Before we begin the auction, my family and I wanted to share a wonderful, private joy with you all. As many of you know, Julian and I have been close since childhood. And tonight, we are thrilled to announce that we are expecting a new addition to the Pierce and Sterling legacy. The crowd gasped. Applause broke out, sparse at first, then growing louder as people looked toward Julian for confirmation. Chloe looked down at Julian, her eyes shining with triumph. Julian, won't you join me on stage? Julian didn't move. The silence grew heavy. The applause died down, replaced by a tense, awkward murmur. Julian slowly raised his head, his eyes bypassing Chloe completely and locking onto me, standing at the back of the room. He walked toward the stage, but he didn't climb the steps. He stood at the bottom, looking up at Chloe with a cold, terrifying smile. A new addition, Chloe? Julian's voice was amplified by the microphone he took from a nearby waiter. That's remarkable. Especially since my medical team confirmed 3 weeks ago that I am biologically sterile. The ballroom went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the marble floor. Chloe's face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Julian, what are you saying? That's a joke. You're joking. I have the medical records right here, Julian said, holding up his tablet for the crowd to see. And the DNA test of the prenatal tissue your sister's contact tried to submit to the city registry under my name. It's not mine, Chloe. Because there is no baby. A collective gasp went through the room. Sienna Sterling stepped forward, her face twisted in rage. Julian. How dare you humiliate my sister like this? You're just trying to cover up your own infidelity with that seamstress. She pointed directly at me. Leave Vivian out of this, Julian said, his voice dropping into a dangerous growl. Why should we? Sienna sneered, stepping down from the stage and walking toward me, her heels clicking like gunshots. She's a liar. She's been blackmailing you. She's carrying some bastard she got from who knows where, trying to pass it off as a Pierce. Mom, the baby said, his voice entirely calm. Show them the diary. I didn't flinch as Sienna approached. I pulled a small, high-quality photocopy of my grandmother's ledger from my clutch and handed it to the nearest reporter from the Daily Chronicle, who had already moved closer to capture the drama. What is this? The reporter asked, looking at the document. It's a record of the Sterling family's financial transactions from 30 years ago, I said, my voice clear and steady, carrying easily across the silent room. Specifically, the blackmail payments the Sterling estate received from Richard Pierce to keep the secret of Julian's adoption quiet. The Sterlings have been living off a lie for a generation. And now, they're trying to use another lie to secure their future. Vivian. Julian gasped, his voice breaking. He took a step toward me, his hands shaking. You knew? My grandmother kept the records, Julian, I said, looking at him with pity. Your father wasn't your father. The Pierce name you're so proud of is just a brand. And the Sterling sisters are just parasites who have been feeding on your family's fear. Sienna looked as if she wanted to tear my eyes out. She lunged forward, her hand raised to strike me. But before she could reach me, 2 private security officers hired by Audrey's firm stepped in, grabbing her arms and pinning her back. Don't touch her, Audrey Lawson said, stepping forward with her phone in her hand. The police are already downstairs, Miss Sterling. We've filed formal charges of harassment, attempted extortion, and the illegal solicitation of private medical records. The courier who delivered that slashed baby onesie to our shop has already identified you as his employer. The crowd erupted into chaos. Reporters began flashing their cameras, crowding around the Sterling family, who were now trapped on the stage under the bright lights, their faces pale and ruined. Julian stood in the center of the room, looking around at the wreckage of his life. He looked at the cameras, the whispering crowd, the crying Chloe, and then, finally, he looked back at me. I didn't stay to watch the rest. I turned and walked out of the ballroom, Audrey beside me, the heavy oak doors closing behind us, shutting out the noise of the dying dynasty. 3 months later. The winter snow had melted, replaced by the soft, green buds of early spring. The shop, renascent, was busier than ever. We had expanded, hiring 2 new assistants to handle the influx of orders from women who had heard about the courageous seamstress of the Lower East Side. My baby bump was now quite prominent, a round, healthy weight that I carried with pride. One evening, after we closed the shop, I sat by the window, drinking a cup of warm chamomile tea. The bell chimed softly. It was Julian. He looked older. His hair had streaks of gray at the temples, and his signature tailored suits had been replaced by a simple, dark wool coat and a plain sweater. He looked less like a corporate titan and more like an ordinary man. Vivian, he said, standing by the door. He didn't try to come closer. Julian, I replied. What do you want? He hesitated, then slowly walked over and sank to his knees on the hardwood floor right in front of my chair. He didn't say a word. He just bowed his head, his shoulders shaking as he began to weep, quiet, heavy tears that fell onto the floorboards. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice broken. I'm so sorry, Vivian. I was a fool. I let them control me. I let my father's lie control me. I almost destroyed the only real thing I ever had. He reached out, his hand trembling as he hovered it near my belly, not daring to touch without permission. Is he mine? Mom, the baby's voice was soft, peaceful. Tell him he can look, but he can't stay. He has his own path to walk, and we have ours. I placed my hand over my stomach, looking down at Julian with a calm, quiet detachment. The anger was gone. The pain was gone. There was only a clean, open space where my future lay. He is yours, Julian, I said softly. But he is not a Pierce. His name is Vance. He will grow up here, in the sun, with people who love him for who he is. Not what he inherits. Julian looked up, his eyes red, his face wet with tears. Can I see him? Can I be a part of his life? I pulled a legal document from the drawer of the sewing table and placed it on his lap. These are the terms Audrey drafted, I said. You will have supervised visitation rights, starting when he is 1 year old. You will not have any say in his education, his medical care, or his residence. And you will never, ever bring him near the Sterling family or the Pierce Group board. Julian looked at the document, his lips trembling. He didn't even read the terms. He grabbed a pen from his pocket and signed his name at the bottom with a shaking hand. Thank you, he whispered, pressing his forehead against my knee for a single fleeting second before standing up. Thank you, Vivian. He turned and walked out of the shop, his silhouette disappearing into the soft spring rain. I watched him go, then looked down at my hands, which were warm and steady. Mom, the baby said, his voice full of laughter and light. You did it. We survived. We're going to be so happy. Yes, we are, I whispered, turning off the lights of the shop. The streetlights outside flickered on, casting a bright, clear path onto the wet pavement. I stepped out into the night, locking the door behind me, knowing that the key was, and would always be, in my own hands.